I hope you all like it. I love it. I've seen it about 20 times. I would never get tired of it. It comes near to being a perfect movie as any movie I've ever seen. Not that the people who made it had any understanding of what they were doing. It's absolutely amazing. Neither Graham Greene, who was involved in making the movie, the author of the script, nor Carol Reed, a great director, understood what was going on. I'll read the quotes in a minute to show you what I mean by that. Probably one person who did seem to understand fully what was going on was Orson Welles. And probably he saved them whenever they were going off the rails. But just the idea that they couldn't understand that they had made a deep, spiritual, religious book. Graham Greene thought it was just an entertainment, he says, and they certainly didn't know explicitly. He didn't know. Is that right? It's too loud for me. Okay, he didn't know explicitly what he was doing. That's Graham Greene. But that's how authors are. It isn't an accident that it's a coherent, deep movie, because he wrote it out of his own coherent, deep feelings. He was a religious Catholic, and so these issues are very clear to him. But what didn't make any sense was he didn't think he was doing that. He thought he was writing an entertainment. And there's a lot about it that's entertaining. And I'm going to start with that. I mean, and it turns out that even the entertainments turn out to be deep, but they are, or sometimes funny and sad, or scary, or surprising. But you notice it's sort of structured around reversals. So Holly arrives to see his friend and finds that Harry is dead. But then it turns out that Harry isn't dead. And then by the end of the movie, Harry is dead. And my favorite is the supposed seeming kidnapping in the taxi, where he's driven furiously fast through deserted streets in Vienna and then tries to get away, but he's cornered and pushed into this sinister castle where it looks like he's going to be tortured and killed. And then it turns out that no, it's a meeting of the literary society that he had promised to talk to, which in the end, he is tortured by the audience, asking intense questions that he can't understand, and these thugs do try to kill him, but they don't quite do it. And then there's funnier ones, like I don't know about you, but I'm totally confused every time, practically, by the shadow of what looks like it must be Orson Welles when they're doing the stakeout to trap him in the railroad station, and then it turns out to look like a balloon man. And then at least I'm convinced, Orson Welles has arrived disguised as a balloon man. Then it turns out to be a balloon man who sells Payne a balloon, which is just wonderful. And of course there is the ultimate reversal at the end of the movie, and that is when everyone's leaving the cemetery, Holly drives off with Calloway, and then Anna passes, and Holly asks to get off and dropped off, and he's waiting for her, and Calloway drives away in the Jeep, expecting that Holly and Anna will get together and walk off in the sunset, and the music reaches a kind of crescendo, and as you know, it's just amazing. She approaches, and she doesn't look at Holly, and she doesn't blink an eye, and she walks right by him as though he wasn't there, and he can't understand a thing about what's happened. After she's gone, he lights a cigarette, and he chucks it away with the same gesture of incomprehension that you've seen once before in the movie, but you have to see it 20 times to notice. The other time he does that same thing is when Harry Lime suddenly vanishes, when he's running after him, and they get into this square where there's no place to hide, it seems, and all of a sudden he's gone. Then he goes over to the fountain, and he picks up the water, and he throws it away in the same way that he throws away the cigarette. He does that when something absolutely incomprehensible happens. But now, the thing to realize is, and I have to make the whole lecture today is about what a dumb movie it would have been if, and utterly uneven, fun, but not interesting really, if they had gotten together and walked off the way Graham Greene's scenario said they should. They're supposed to walk off arm in arm into the sunset. The original script says, Calloway is narrating, he caught up with her and they walked side by side. I don't think he said a word to her. It was like the end of a story, except that before they turned out of my sight, her hand was through his arm. Well, what do you think about that? Does that seem like a good idea? Well, in a superficial way, it's not a good idea. They understood it. Only in a superficial way they understood it wasn't a good idea. That Carol Reed talked Graham Greene out of the ending, saying that it would have been too callous for her to he has just shot her lover, and now they're walking off arm in arm. What Graham Greene says is one of the few major disputes between Carol Reed and myself concern the ending, and he is proved triumphantly right. At least they agree that the final ending is right, and that's good. But he says, I have the view that entertainment of this kind is too light to carry the weight of an unhappy ending. Reed, on the other hand, felt that my ending, indeterminate as it was, with no word spoken, would strike the audience as being unpleasantly cynical, sort of like Richard III proposing to Anne over the coffin of her husband, whom he's just killed. And and after all, it just come from Harry's funeral, a very, very previous scene. So they decided they wouldn't do it that way. Carol Reed thought that maybe the couple would have to wait a few months before they could get together, and they missed the point of the movie completely. But luckily, it doesn't matter that they did get the right ending, even though they got it for the wrong reason. Well, now I have to explain why that's the wrong ending. I mean, why that's the right ending, even though that's the wrong reason. And that's the whole movie is about that ending. It leads up to that ending, even though nobody seemed to notice. And so here we go. What I want to say is that they couldn't get together. They are diametrical opposites. And even that's too mild a statement. They are really not even opposites, because opposites are in the same dimension. They aren't in the same dimension. They live in incommensurate spheres of existence, sort of familiar ones in a way. Greek in the case of Holly, and Christian in the case of the old culture that I had a word for it, but I forget what it is. Not incommensurate. So I used to call it schizophrenic, though, our culture, but that's not the word I want to call it now. Contradictory, that'll do. The same contradictions that I talked about in the first lecture are incarnated in these people, and they are just out of touch with each other. So, but we need to figure out more in detail, well, why does she walk past it? And to understand that, you've got to contrast the two main characters in the movie, Holly Martins and Harry Lime. She probably, it just occurs to me, making this up as I go along, given the plot, she's going to walk by either one of them. But she's going to walk by two of them for absolutely different reasons. And she doesn't get a chance to walk by Harry Lime because he's dead. But the important thing is to see the difference between Holly and Harry and how they are totally not even opposite from each other, but in different worlds. And then you can see on the basis of that the relation of Calloway to Anne and how they are opposite in the same way and in different worlds in the same way. That's why you got all that chart. But don't think about the chart I gave you yet. You'll understand it bit by bit. And then that's sort of there as a review. So the clue to understanding Holly, I think, is what Anna says to him in the cafe while he's waiting to turn Harry over to the police. And she's found him there. And she says on 127, I'll give the page references because those of you who want to write on it will want to check out on it. So she says, honest, sensible, sober, harmless Holly Martins. In the script it says Rollo. They changed his name from Rollo to Holly. if you just think about each of those characteristics, you discover that everything that she says about him is true except the harmless. So let's go through them. He does always tell the truth. And if anybody disagrees with me about any of this, let me know. How many saw it for the first time? Okay. So you're not going to get everything, but you're going to get a lot more the first time than I got the first time. I'm sure a lot more video conscious than I was when I saw it. But he does tell the truth, as far as I know, every time. And now the thing is, see if you got this. Does that telling of the truth make him harmless? What happens when he tells the truth? That there are 3 deaths that actually take place in the movie. And who is responsible for those 3 deaths? Anybody think about, you got an idea about that? Yeah. Yeah, right. He's either directly or indirectly responsible for all of them. Let's go through them. Who's the first one to get killed of his victims? The porter. And how come the porter gets killed? Now you have to get into the details of the plot. Do you remember why?
Tell Holly Martin something about the day Harry Lund got killed.
That's right. He was going to say, he did tell him, didn't he, that there's a third man. But Harry Lund doesn't know that he's told him that. And what he knows is that Holly said to Kurtz that the porter knows a lot more. And after that, the next thing we see a few scenes later is the porter with an amazing expression on his face. And the next scene after that, he's dead. What is he looking so upset about? Now, besides the fact that obviously somebody's coming at him with a knife or strangling him, about to strangle him. He looks more weirdly upset than that. Well, he thinks Harry Lime is dead. So it's a dead man coming after him to kill him. And so he gets killed by Harry Lime because Holly Martins has told the truth, but nobody even asked him about what the porter knows. And there he goes. The next one to get killed is whom? Killed, this time indirectly, shot by Harry Lime. Payne gets shot by Harry Lime. How does it happen that Payne gets shot? He's running out into the sewer to try to get Holly Martins pushed off to safety because he's just marching down the middle of the sewer in his usual fearless or foolhardy way and toward where Harry Lime might be hiding and is, in fact. So then Lime shoots Payne. And finally, who's the last one to get killed directly by Holly? Harry himself, right. So there you get him. He's honest and he's sensible. He has very little sense of humor. He's sober most of the time. He does drink a little now and then. But he's certainly humorless. Remember this funny part where he tells her that when she's so sad about the death of Harry, and he says, I can stand on my head and look at you between my legs and make funny faces if that would make you laugh. And she looks more unhappy than at any other moment in the movie, as far as I can see. So, but he's sensible in the sense that he seems to have a sensible notion of right and wrong, and he always does what's right, bravely and persistently does what looks right to him. And he is boring. I don't know, that's not really on the list, but he is boring. He can't even entertain the cat. When he's playing with the cat on her bed, the cat gives this huge yawn and leaves, in fact, to go find Harry, who's waiting under the window, not presumably for the cat. It's not clear what Harry's waiting under the window for, since he can't really reveal to Anna that he's alive. It's an interesting question about Harry's personality, what he's doing under the window there. This year I have a new picture which I will try on you. It flies, but not. So let's go to Harry. Okay. He's very dishonest. He's dissembling and manipulative. That scene comes out most clearly, that trait in the Ferris wheel thing, I think he is at first genuinely glad to see Holly. This is what I hadn't realized before. And he did bring Holly all the way to Vienna, not just to advertise his penicillin stuff, fraud or whatever, business, but because they are old friends, best friends, and he's glad to see him. But then it turns out that when he thinks that Holly's the only one who knows that he's alive, he's prepared to kill him. And then all that Holly has to say is, "I told Calloway." And as soon as he discovers it won't, and remember he opens the door and he gets ready to push him out, and he says, "I don't think they'll find a bullet in you." He's going to shoot him and push him out when you fall from up here. At which point Holly says, "I told Calloway." And immediately he puts on a big friendly smile and says, "How could we ever fight? We're the best of buddies," and so forth. So he is pretty devious and manipulative, where it comes to, and I'm going to come back to this, saving his own skin. He's ready to shoot Holly and push him out of the Ferris wheel, even though Holly is I think genuinely is his best friend. And other things about him, he's not sober. He's flamboyant in what he does. Anna loves him. She says the cat loves him. Holly says he loves him. That he makes these wonderful gestures, like meeting on the Ferris wheel, and he's standing under her window, which again is puzzling. But I think he stands under her window because he really cares about her. He would like to see her, and he can't see her, but he wants to, because he writes her love letters. He really cares about her, and he makes these extravagant and dangerous gestures because he cares enough about Holly that he's ready to meet Holly in the 4-power zone in the railroad station. And he knows that could be a trap, and he says, "It's just you I want to meet, old man. Don't bring the police along." And he trusts Holly to honor that sort of gentleman's agreement between them. And he's funny. They say that he's fun-loving, that when they're with him, he made everything seem fun. Holly says on page 70. But he's dangerous in a different way than Holly is dangerous, but very dangerous. And to get exactly right what kind of dangerous he is important. He's ruthless and selfish. That is, he really cares about Holly, his best friend, and he really cares about Anna. At least this is my new view. I haven't taken seriously how much he cares about her. I think you have to. I mean, why would he go to the trouble and risk of meeting Harry in the railroad station and standing under her window if he didn't really care about them? Well, then, what makes him so dangerous? Well, he's ready to kill anybody to save his own skin. There is nothing that has a higher pull on him, a higher authority for him than his own life, finally. He comes close to being this person that you all want to know about, somebody who has an unconditional commitment to themselves. You could put it that way. It doesn't exactly give him an identity because it's sort of empty and circular. There's no content in having a commitment to yourself. You can't tell what you're going to do the next day. It doesn't seem to give you the finite and temporal. But he does have the only unconditional thing in his world is him, his life. He's ready to kill his best friend. And this goes by awfully fast. I don't know if any of you noticed it. He's going to give Anna over to the Russians to protect himself. They're going to let him stay in the Russian sector where the pain of the Americans, Calloway and the Americans can't get him. And why would the Russians care to get Anna? Well, I think it's sort of hinted at. I couldn't stay this time to see the movie, but maybe you know. Remember, Harry has gotten Anna her identity papers. And I think they're trying to find the forger. There's all this about the Russian guy keeping the identity papers and holding them up and saying, "We need the girl," and so forth. I think they want her to lead them to the forger. But in any case, that's not an important part of the plot. An important part of the plot is that that Harry is ready to turn over to the Russians. And Holly knows that, and he's shocked. He says so in the Ferris wheel scene. I didn't write that down. It's that as soon as his life is threatened, he draws a heart and an arrow on the window of the Ferris wheel, but he says, "What can I do, old man? We're not heroes." So, and he's going to obviously give her away. But I wish I could find in a hurry now where he says that he's oh yeah, here we are on 111. I should write it down. Okay, on 111 we have. You don't give a damn about her, do you? Martin says. I've got a lot on my mind, Harry says. You won't do a thing to help her. What can I do, Holly? Be reasonable. We aren't heroes. You have many contacts. I've got to be careful. Martin, with sudden realization, you informed on her. And Harry says, don't be a policeman, old man. And so it's clear that when it comes to saving his own skin, he will give her away, even though I think in a relative way he loves her, not unconditional, obviously, because there's one higher condition, namely him staying alive. And that's what it is to be a sinner, I think. That is, to be a sinner is to be totally self-loving, totally self-centered. And you see, even though he's ready to take risks to stay under the window or to meet Holly in the railroad station, when it turns out that this really is a threat, then it turns out all his affections are conditional. As soon as his life is threatened, he'll betray and kill his closest friend and the woman he loves. That's what it is to be a sinner. The people, and then Graham Greene knows all this, the people at the bottom of hell in Dante, where you go to find out how the inferno is organized and what the worst sin is. The people in the bottom of hell are all betrayers of people very close to them, fathers and sons and fathers and so forth. And so when it's betraying somebody intimate with you, that you care about, who's very close to you, that makes him an absolute sinner. It's not just lower immediacy like a child. It isn't that he just makes an exception of himself. It's worse than that. It's people who loved each other. I mean, Anna says of him, we loved each other. And so let's suppose he loved her. Nonetheless, he betrays her. And that's absolute sinfulness, I think. And I think he's supposed to be in despair, knowing this, but you can't really see it very well in the movie. You can read it in the script. So what you read in the script is just Holly says, you used to believe in God. This is on 113. And it says, a shade of melancholy crosses Harry's face. I take that melancholy to be a kind of despair. And he says, I still do believe, old man, in God and mercy and all that. The dead are happy or dead, you know. They don't miss much here, poor devils. So remember, if you can't believe that you can be joyful in this life, I never thought of that before. I thought like Kierkegaard. If you think that people can't be joyful in this life, then you are in despair, even if you think they can be joyful in the afterlife. So that idea that people don't miss much here, poor devils, everybody. The world is not a happy place to be, and he's not happy either. And that's because, I would put it, he's already in hell. And you see that in the way that he's almost always in the dark or in the sewer. And the last thing you see of him, almost last before he gets shot, is him reaching up his hands reaching up through the grating toward heaven, presumably, out of the sewer, which is where he wants to be, is out, up, and he can't get there. He's trapped in the sewer. It's a very moving thing with fingers. That's not in the script. That's Carol Reed genius. It just says he gets to this grate and he reaches up. You should switch to filming from the street with him reaching up. It's just too neat. So, okay. Everything okay so far? Have I said anything that you know better, that I could do better, or that I got wrong, or that I missed? Yeah.
One thing that you didn't mention is when they're up
Ferris wheel.
and he looks down and he says, just think of the people as dots. At 50 pounds a dot. In other words, the height of cynicism and the total immorality that is just chilling.
Okay, good. It's funny. I was going to mention that because I've got so much to say that I cut one of the things, and that's what I cut. But let's talk about it because it's important. The whole Ferris wheel thing is very interesting. From the top of the Ferris wheel, you really got something like the ethical. All of the individual dots are impersonal. And he says something like, well, the Russians kill people on principle. Why shouldn't I, if they don't know, why shouldn't I kill these little dots? I don't know them either. And what's interesting is, from the top of the Ferris wheel, which is from the sort of detached ethical perspective, you'd expect Holly to have something to say. To say you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to kill these spots. But because there's no personal connection to them, and they are just spots, I think he can't figure out how to, so to speak, defend them. And it's a critique of the ethical, I think, that you can make this kind of callous, as you say, horribly callous remark, if you don't have any relation to the people that you're making the remark about. And I think that's what Graham Greene thinks. But it's at the bottom of the Ferris wheel where this takes place, this talk about faith and the melancholy and so forth, because they're talking about betraying a real person, namely Anna, and they're talking about despair of Holly. And I think the religious dimension is, so to speak, sorry. Am I saying this right? Yeah, well, that's one reason I didn't want to talk about it. There's too many funny dimensions going on. But as far as the Ferris wheel is concerned, so seeing things from nowhere above is the ethical, and seeing things person to person on the ground floor is when the religious discussion happens. That's all interesting and important. Okay, back to where I was, because I just want to make sure that I cover. If that doesn't mean you shouldn't stop me, I appreciate it. So, Holly. So, Holly's not religious at all. And that doesn't mean just not religious. He is just got a total tin ear where religion is concerned. He is out of it. And you get all these funny things. For one thing, Orson Welles understands very well. Right after Holly asks Harry if he believes in God, Orson Welles ad-libs. It isn't in the script. And what do you believe in, Holly? And Holly doesn't answer. He doesn't believe in anything. He doesn't even know what believing in something is. When he's asked to talk about the crisis of faith, he says, what does that mean? He doesn't know what it means. And the funniest example is when he's in Dr. Winkle's office surrounded by all those something like this, which we can recognize as religious relics, he says, what a nice collection of stuff you have here. He doesn't even know what it is. I mean, he just doesn't have any clue. And that's, I don't know whether it's important that his name is Holly. They changed it from Rollo, because I take it they thought it was even sillier. And she says, Holly, what a silly name. I take it maybe it has associations of Christmas decorations or Hollywood or sort of plastic goody-good. Some very smart student, who's probably too clever by half in this case, says that Holly looks nice, but it's really poison. That would be neat if they're thinking it. It's all right if we can think it. But in any case, that's so much for Holly for the time being. We'll come back to it. I'm just getting all the people laid out. So Anna. So Anna is named after a saint, Saint Anne, the mother of Mary, I think. Right? Somebody Okay. And she is purely Christian. And she is sort of in the up-down dimension, whereas Harry is in the sewer and can't get out. He's in the bottom of hell, so to speak, sort of architecturally. Where does she live? At the top, in the highest place, in the garret, remember, of this, and that's because she's at the top of this perpendicular. See, there's a religious dimension, and it's vertical. One of the ways you can tell it is vertical is what the porter says. When at the beginning, what does he say? Where he's, remember where everybody laughed? I was still here. It's a great move. When he's explaining what happened to Holly, or to Harry, who's dead, he's in heaven or in hell. Then he's got it reversed, but he's got the dimension right. And the fact that it's reversed is deep in the sense, not in this movie, but that it's reversible up to the last minute if you're in the religious dimension, that you can repent and go from the bottom to the top, or you can sin and go from the top to the bottom. But mainly, Anna is up here. And Harry is up here. And so, but we have to read about her. What makes her a saint in this way? Well, the fact that she's got an unconditional commitment to Harry. And that she won't betray it. That's just redundant. I mean, if you've got an unconditional commitment, you can't betray it. There is nothing that has a higher claim on her. Certainly not her own good. She'd be perfectly happy to die for Harry. We see her sacrificing everything she's got for Harry when she doesn't get on the train. All her belongings are on the train. Her identity papers are in the Russian headquarters. She's nothing and nobody once that train leaves. She's trapped in Vienna by the Russians with no clothes and no papers, and she gives that all up because she doesn't want to have anything to do with this plot to betray Harry to the police. But something even more important. What's her role in this plot finally? Once she once she sacrifices everything because she won't betray Harry, what happens next, plot-wise, which is very deep and important? What does she say to Harry when she figures out what's going on? Well, let's go to it because it's absolutely crucial for what I want to talk about. I'm trying to go to where they're in the railroad station, but I'm having trouble finding it. Oh, there we are. Okay, now we're in the railroad station. It's a simple sentence for it. All she does is say, Harry, the police. And that's enough. I mean, she saves him from this trap. Here it is on 127. Martin says, Anna's here. I can't get her to move away. They turn and see Harry. And Harry, run the police. Now, why is that important? Is that an ethical thing to do? She is obstructing justice. She is helping a known killer to escape, where he can go on killing more people. And she does it because she cannot resist trying to save him. Because the highest thing in her life is not to betray him. Not that she wants to see him anymore, because she is ethical enough to have, once she knows that he's killed the children, she says, I never want to see him again, but he's in me. That's the truth of it. And that means that though she respects the ethical, and everything else being equal, abides by the ethical, there's one thing that has a higher authority in her life than the ethical, namely Harry. So what is she doing when she says to the police, says to Harry the police? In Kierkegaard's genre. Yeah. She's what? Transcends the ethical. What's the official jargon for that? Right. The teleological suspension of the ethical. She, though she understands the ethical and believes in it, doesn't think it's terrible that he's killed these kids, she suspends the ethical in the sense that when this higher authority has calls, so to speak, her unconditional commitment to Harry trumps the ethical, and she does something strictly unethical, anti-ethical, dangerous. Yeah.
I think I maybe misunderstood this, but in the film, when she's talking to Holly about Harry, and Harry kind of says, or Holly says to her, but he's, like really thinking stuff. She says, just because you're looking one more thing about a person doesn't change.
That's good. That's right. That's important, relevant line. Can you hear her? When she says to Holly, when they're talking, after Holly discovers that she's seen Calloway and she knows about the children, and he's shocked that she's still being saying sort of things about him. And she says, just because you find out something else about somebody, it doesn't change things. And she's quoting that, and she's right. That means once you've got an unconditional commitment to somebody, there's nothing you can find out in the way she understands this that can change your relation, because any commitment is anything. Nothing has higher authority. So if you find out they're a killer, that's bad. And she says she doesn't want to see him again. Let's see. I don't want him anymore. This is 122. I don't want to see him, hear him, but that's a fact. I wouldn't do a thing to harm him. And that's I forget where, but I got it written down. Someplace when she says what you said, that it's funny what he says. That's why I want to find it. She says it's 94. She says, Holly says, whoever killed him, it was justice. Maybe I'd have killed him myself. She says, a man doesn't alter because he finds out more. That's what she's quoting. And he says, what would you expect him to say? Do you expect him to understand this and argue about it? No, he says, I hate the way you talk. I've got a splitting headache, and you talk and talk. You make me cross. I mean, she's saying something he can't understand. Namely, there's something higher than the ethical. It just makes it crazy, because it's literally impossible. She's just jabbering nonsense as far as he's concerned. And that's very interesting. And that's tied up with this other quote where they're again talking about this, and you can see the same issue coming up, more in terms of unconditional commitments. Here, on page 122, she says, and you have the nerve to talk about love. Love for me, love for Harry. How do you spell the word? And then she says, you got your precious honesty. You don't want something else. There's honest, Holly Martins. And Mark, I suppose you still want him. No, I don't want him. I don't want that. And then when I read that, I don't want to see him, but he's in me. That's the fact. I loved him. You loved him. What good have we done? Oh, love. And then she says, look at yourself in the mirror. They have a name for faces like that. Very important what the name is. Yeah. You want to say something else?
Yeah.
Well, let me do the name. First, what's the name for the face in the mirror after that speech? Absolutely crucial to understanding how she looks at it. What's he doing? Exactly. That's exactly the right word. He is a betrayer. He has gone against the person he loves. He has harmed the person he loves. Nothing, absolutely nothing in the universe makes that an acceptable thing to do. In fact, that's the worst possible thing to do. I said the people who betray intimate relations are at the bottom of the inferno. They're in the sewer. You can't do anything worse from her, obviously Christian perspective. Now,
I don't see how she's suspending the ethical things. I guess the ethical expression of her relationship to Harry would be that she should be faithful to him. And that's what she does. So how, like with Abraham and Isaac, Abraham transcended by,
No. You're wrong. There is no ethical principle like you should be faithful to him. Abraham's ethical principle is the father should love and protect the son in general. And you can say something in general. I think it's an interesting point. If you turned this into an ethical issue, it would be something like you shouldn't hurt the person you love as a universal principle. But then you'd get the thing, well, but suppose there's a higher ethical, like the person you love is going around killing people. Then higher ethical would say you should, turn him in, and that wouldn't be a suspension of the ethical. That would be like the tragic hero. You'd have to give up your lover by turning him over to the police. But she doesn't do it that way. She does it without a principle. She does it because, how will I put it? It's not a general principle about stay true to your lover, which could be trumped by a higher ethical principle. It's I love him. It's very concrete, and I can't do anything to harm him. And then you can't make that into a general principle, I think the idea is supposed to be. I mean, it's a very good question. There's probably a paper topic in there. But I think that it's supposed to turn out the way I just tried to do it. You can't turn anything Anna does into a universal ethical principle. What she does is act completely on her emotions or commitment. Emotion sounds too low or immediacy. She simply acts out of what defines her life. And it's her acting out of what defines her life. It's not a principle that we can state in universal ethical terms from the top of the Ferris wheel. Yeah.
I was just wondering, do you think that you can indicate that in both of these movies, the sort of character that sacrifices everything is a woman? Like, it's a little bit different with Anna and French, because they both act in, like, emotional.
I see. Well, I think that might be interesting. It's an interesting question to bear in mind if you can remember this long until you see Dreyfus at the end of the course, where it's the reverse. The person who sacrifices everything is the man, and the one who is completely selfish is the woman. So at least things got. But I don't think we're supposed to, draw any. If we're not supposed to believe in any stereotypes about this. Anybody could sacrifice. And it's not exactly. I'm not quite stating it correctly, but until we get there, I can tell you, I wouldn't have time to tell you the plot of the last movie. I wouldn't do it. Anyway, okay. Let me see. I got back where I am because though you raised lots of interesting questions, I don't know where I am now. So we talked about there's this sort of thing we have to clear up, namely the sense in which what I've said now is. Now I've sort of exposed my hand why I chose the movie. Because it's a movie, I think, about the teleological suspension of the ethical. It's about the incomprehensibility to the ethical. That betrayal is the worst thing that you can do. And that there's nothing sort of universal that you can do that's worse. I mean, being a murderer and killing dozens of little children, it's not on the same scale. It's not worse or better. It's just a different dimension. That's what it is to be in the suspension of the ethical business. But now, having said that, people get interested in something else, which I think is a kind of red herring, but I have to talk about it. Is Anna a night of faith or a night of resignation with respect to so she thinks, death of Harry Lime? And she does say, when she hears Harry Lime is dead, I want to be dead too. Does that sound familiar? On page 46, you loved him, didn't you? I don't know, you can't know a thing like that. See, she doesn't want to sort of have a detached, reflective knowledge about it. She just lives in it. So then she says, I don't know anything anymore except I want to be dead too. That's what the Japanese woman said, the French woman said just before the Japanese man slapped her when she was with the German. Now, does that mean that Hana is an act of resignation? What do you think? Yeah.
I say no because she's still, when Harry comes back, she's still able to accept that.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that, but that's true. Not that she wants to get back together with him. It's complicated.
If she's an act of resignation, she wouldn't be able to handle that.
I see.
She would be resigned to us.
Okay. I think that's good, but I think it's, in a funny sense, irrelevant. But I have to tell you why. I think, you want to say something about it?
Yeah, I was just going to say that wouldn't it only be weird that if she found out he was still alive, she's trying to go back to him? Because, the night of resignation just keeps the memory, constant.
Right.
And, well,
But she also doesn't want to go back.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
So it looks like she's an act of resignation.
Yeah, I think she is an
And so does he. Does anybody just want to doubt this besides me? And on what grounds? Yes.
I have never considered her a United States just because if you compare the French woman and here she was one of more, it's not as obvious because she doesn't have this passionate. It's not as obvious. It's not. She doesn't seem so committed to this person. I mean, even if she is faithful to him, she doesn't seem that crushed by the fact that he's dead.
I think she is crushed. She wants to die too. And it means her identity and her world is smashed when he's dead. He does give her her identity. As another student once said, who was again probably too clever by half, but I can't resist these things, he literally gives her her identity. He gives her her identity papers. I don't know if Graham Greene was thinking that, but it's neat. Anyway, somebody back, where are you? Yeah.
She's happy. She finds out he's alive. She receives him joyfully.
She receives him back, but not exactly back. Well, I think you're all following a red herring, which is the following, that she's in grief. And remember, when you're in grief, you're bound to sound like an act of resignation in the sense that you're bound to say, my world is smashed, and when he says to her, you'll love somebody again, she says, I don't want to ever love anybody again. Now that certainly is what the French woman says, and she says it as a resignation person. She has a right to say it as a resignation person. She's been living it for 20 years. But if your lover just died, you're bound to, that's what grief is. You're bound to think, this is the end of the world. I've lost my identity. I've lost my world. Everything is gray. I wish I were dead. That's what Augustine says when his friend dies. But the question is, what movements is she going to make in the face of this to talk like Kierkegaard? Is she going to then remember Harry Lime all the rest of her life and be in despair because she can't have another lover, because she's got to keep this one always before her? There's no hint of that. And there's at least one hint that that's not right. And it shouldn't be right, because we know that she's a saint, that she's totally sacrificial, that she's got lots of characteristics that the French woman doesn't have. So she better be a knight of faith. Well, a funny clue is that what does she do when she's her job as an actress? What kind of play does she play? Remember? In comedies, never tragedies. Do you see any clue there about what that shows that she's a knight of faith and not a knight of resignation? It's pretty far-fetched, but I believe it. That in the world of the spirit, things always come out all right, remember Kierkegaard said at the beginning of the preface. We saw that. And that means that everything is a comedy, not in a ho-ho-ho sense, but the divine comedy is a comedy when Dante writes it, because in a comedy, finally everything will turn out all right. The good people are always rewarded and the bad people are always punished. And that's right for her. If she's not a tragedy. Tragedies go with the Greek side. Like Agamemnon, where you have to give up a lower ethical for a higher ethical, and you just don't get rewarded for it. You get admired for it. But it's different. But she, it's obvious, is going to go through grief and suffer in such a way that she's going to get another lover outside of the play, and maybe a year later. or more, but that's the kind of person she is. You can't picture her saying, I'm going to remain faithful to Harry Lime forever. Even the way she talks about her relation to him now that he's dead, that he's a part of her, that he's in her. She's already beginning to do the interiorizing, where Harry will always be in her, but in a way that she will be open to somebody else, because he will have become a part of her. He will stay a part of her when she's open to somebody else. So when I said what you guys were saying is irrelevant, I just mean you got to be careful. You can't speak within some grief of somebody who has just discovered that their lover is dead, and then discovered that he isn't, and then in the end discovered that he is. You can't conclude anything except the following, I think, that she is able to accept the fact that he's dead, and that it's over with him as a finite temporal lover. And you can see that because of what happens at the grave. Remember the first time, for reasons I don't understand, just because she's so in tune with the way the world is spiritually, she just somehow senses that he's not dead. She won't throw the dirt on the grave. And the second time, she's accepted that he's dead, and she throws the dirt on the grave. This kind of accepting is important. And just to show that Holly Martins is always out of it, the first time he does throw the dirt on the grave, and the second time he refuses to throw the dirt on the grave. He never gets it. One way to see that he never gets it is the wonderful fact that he doesn't understand a word of German. Everybody else in the whole thing, even Calloway, I don't know about Payne, but most everybody at least understands enough German to know what's going on, but not him. Okay, I'm going to come back. That was a kind of digression. And you may, if you think I'm wrong, if you think that there's some way to make her into an item of resignation, just write a paper about it and find the quotes that defend it. Now let me see if I can catch up what I am. Unless somebody wants to say something. Okay, then I'm going to catch up what I am. Okay, we're ready for the ethical. We've been talking all about the religious dimension. Harry is the total sinner at the bottom of hell. I is the total saint, and will be singing with the angels in heaven. And what about Calloway and Holly? Let's talk about Calloway. Now, it should be a clue. It took me a long time to see this, but it should be a clue that just as in the spiritual dimension, which is the business, you've got a positive spiritual thing, and a negative spiritual or no sinner, you'd expect there to be, the way I think about it, an ethical dimension, which is not up in the garrets and down in the sewer, but a street level, and there's going to be a negative ethical and a positive. Let's start with the positive. Okay, let's start with the positive ethical. Who's the good ethical? Who? Holly. You think so? Calloway. Yeah, Calloway. What's wrong with Holly? We'll come back to him. That's the good ethical. What? Well, he does. What was his best friend? Holly killed his best friend. Well, that's all right. That's one of the better things. That's what he should do. That's ethical. I mean, he's got to kill this guy. Well, he's feeling sorry for him. He was asked to do it by him. The guy deserves to be dead. No, it's a different thing about him that makes him the bad ethical. He's the sheriff of Santa Fe, they all say. And it isn't even really the sheriff. He's come in as a kind of vigilante. He's got his own, he thinks that he can just act on his own views of right and wrong, without the institutions of the police and the courts and everything else. And he will go and just do it. And that's dangerous. It turns out to be very dangerous. That's what gets the poor killed. That's what gets Paine killed. And that's what, period. And then Harry has to get killed. So, but let me go first through Calloway. And so for Calloway, if you pay attention to the names like Anna and Holly, then you might want to pay attention to the name. And Harry, by the way, I don't have time. Quick, I never understood Harry Lyme. Another student, this is a tough one. Is this too clever by half or deep? Why is he called Harry Lyme? Well, there is an important moment in Hamlet where Claudius, trying to repent for his sins, killing the king and marrying the wife, but feeling too comfortable in all of the results, says, "Oh, Lyman soul, who something to mount up." I have it in here, but I wasn't going to read it. But I thought it's so. "Oh, Lyman soul that struggles to be free are more engaged." Lime was used to trap birds, so the more they tried to get out of the sticky stuff, the more they got into it. You could certainly hear that line when you see the fingers coming out of the grating, and you think of Harry Lyme as stuck in the slime, so to speak, and not able to get out of it. Now, whether Graham Greene hears that overtone of Hamlet in there, I have no idea, but I don't understand why else we should call him Harry Lyme. So that student doesn't seem to be too clever by half, but just clever. So anyway, there he is. But Calloway, I got sidetracked. What association do you have with the name of Calloway? I would say callous, wouldn't you? That he does things the callous way. Now, he doesn't really, but he looks callous when he takes the love lessons. What he's not really callous, he's professional. That is, he goes about things in a apparently heartless way on 124 when he's taking him through the hospital and talking in a jocular way as he does. A cheerful, professional, apparently heartless way. And that's because he is a professional, and he knows that, as he puts it, death is at the bottom of everything. And his job is, you know how he describes his job, remember? I don't think I could open it to it. He says his job is to keep people from getting hurt. And he's got this kind of negative, minimal job view. But he's not really callous. There's a difference between being professional and being callous. You can see that he really isn't, because when they inspect the beds, the notes say, Martin's face. Martin's face. Never mind. I thought it was Calloway. And then I was going to say, somebody's got a lot of anxiety and compassion. Never mind that. So what can I say else to show that he's... when he's with Paine. When Paine gets shot, Calloway temporarily forgets his duties. He is so upset. And he leans over Paine, and he's terribly grieving. He's trying, when he sees that he's dead, so much that he forgets that his job is to keep Holly from getting hurt. And then Holly runs off and would have gotten hurt if it wasn't that Harry's already been shot and is too weak to shoot him. I don't remember the details. Does Harry try to shoot him, or is he so wounded that he only wants to be shot because he knows he's dying anyway? I think that's it. Harry doesn't make any attempt to shoot Holly. No, he's already been knocked out. But that's just luck on the part of Holly. And Calloway feels bad that he hasn't rushed off and done his job. But he says on 53, death is at the bottom of everything, Holly. Leave death to the professionals. And so he has a modest sense of his job. He isn't the kind of hero promoting justice everywhere. He's a professional keeping people from getting hurt. Maybe he's like a tragic hero in the sense that he has to just give up his devotion to his friend for a while, Paine, to go after the higher issues like the criminals. But otherwise, he is just clean-cut ethical. And there's every way that Holland is trying to just do this job of cleaning up Vienna and getting and so forth on his own. And let's see if I can say more about that. No, I think that's it. It's clear Graham Greene can't stand people who are sort of self-righteous and completely innocent, don't have any sense of evil, and they always wreak havoc in any Graham Greene novel. The naive ethical is a very dangerous thing. So there's the positive ethical, which is the professional. They understand the ethical is a difficult job, and then there is the naive vigilante. So now, Holly is certainly an extreme version of that. Let me see. Okay, so now we've got the positive and negative of both of these dimensions. Now, the question is, of course, how these dimensions relate to each other. And so we have to talk about that. They are incompatible. But you ask yourself, where do you stay? And you see what a hard thing it is. It's an example of the kind of thing I was talking about in my first lecture. You're in both sides of this split, and your intuitions will be split. Which would you do? Protect a mass murderer out of love, or bring the killer of thousands of children to justice, even though you would be standing by watching your lover be shot, thanks to you? Take your choice. I mean, you can, from either perspective, you could see the other one is clearly wrong, and you can't really have both. And Calloway has clearly the perspective that no matter who, even if he were in love, if that made any sense, with Holly, he would have to kill him. And Anna thinks, even though Holly turns out to be as bad a person as you could possibly be, she can't hurt him. So, I don't know what you think. Which side are you on? Let's see, how many think that they would never harm the person they love, no matter how bad they turned out to be, and they would obstruct justice for them? Well, okay, fewer. The Christian saints are in the minority these days. How many feel that ethics is higher, and that if somebody's a murderer and is going to go out and maybe kill more people, even if they're the person you love, you have to kill them or help kill them? Okay, and how many are sort of torn and don't know what to do? Ah, good. You're my guys. Okay. Yeah, I think it's hopeless. I mean, in our culture, there's just you can't have a clear intuition about it. And that's what this marvelous. That's why the movie is so terrific. So let's go on now. It looks, though, that, the secular people did outnumber the religious people, and therefore the movie ought to sort of redress the balance. And the movie does. It doesn't really do it. But who does it? Who makes up a speech on the spot to make sure that your intuitions go both ways? Good old Orson Welles. The famous speech from The Third Man, which he just made up on the set, is 30 years under the Borgias, there was warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed. They produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. That's the religious dimension, the way he's setting it up. In Switzerland, there was brotherly love, 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did that produce? The cuckoo clock. Okay, so that's supposed to give you the view from the spiritual, against the ethical, as superficial compared to the religious. And in fact, there's no answer. And I think, though now this is needing to clarify out, the way the movie is set up, so there's never any clear up and down. The vertical and the horizontal are always off in the movie. I once thought they were off at every moment where these two spheres of existence came into conflict. Unfortunately, that would be too good to be true. But in general, the movie does not have a clear up and down. That is, you don't know whether it's this dimension or that dimension that things are happening in. That's because they're happening in the conflict of these two dimensions. And now we get to the end of the movie then. The two dimensions that are in our tradition are incommensurable, and their representatives, namely Anna and Holly, can't understand each other. We've seen Holly saying that she gives him a headache. Hannah says to Calloway, I mean, not the highest ethical, which is what you want to have it happen. She says to Calloway, 62, you're wrong about Harry, you're wrong about everything. And then she says on the next page to Calloway again, you've got everything upside down. And finally on 105 she says to him, you're a fool. And all of that is just to say, you're ethical. You think that the highest thing, you think that she's talking to him about how he's trying to get her to betray Holly at that point. Or sorry, Harry at that point. And she's saying, what in the world is wrong with you? Do you think that I would become a betrayer just because this guy has become completely unethical and I should join the police? You are a fool if you think that. And that's what she says on 105. He says, tell me where a line is or I'll have to give you over to Colonel Brodsky. And she says, I don't know. He says, if you help us, we're prepared to help you. And she says, Martin's always said you were a fool. Holly, of course, got it wrong as usual. He's not a fool from the dimension where Holly is talking. Holly's the fool. But from her dimension, right, he is the fool. For her, the fool is thinking that he's a fool for thinking that she would turn in Harry to save her skin or because of anything anti-ethical that he had done. Okay, now we're ready to talk about the end of the movie. You should, I hope, see now why it has to happen the way it happens and how crazy it would be for them to get together at the end like Carol Reed and Graham Greene wanted. The best way to see it, I think, is for fun. I tell you how each of the people should be thinking about what's going on. Harry not. Each of the three that are left. Calloway, I got my man, but Payne is dead. It's a hard job to be a professional policeman and keep people from getting hurt. Death's at the bottom of everything. Now what I have to do is get that dangerous cowboy out at the end. I think that's his thing. He's got his airplane tickets and he's going to rush into the airport. Holly, I'm the sheriff of Santa Fe. I've come into this corrupt old town and cleaned things up. I killed the bad guy. I made a fool of the bad sheriff. Now all I have to do is save the damsel in distress, and we'll walk off into the sunset together. So he, being the stupidest in the movie, shares the view of Graham Greene and Carol Reed. Anna's thinking, I'm glad Harry's dead. I wouldn't have wanted to see him again anyway. And now they can't hurt him anymore. But I would never betray him. Holly turned out to be even worse than Harry. Harry was a murderer, but Holly was a betrayer. That's the crucial line. When you hear that, you know what's going to happen at the end of the movie. There's no tragic conflict between the ethical. They're just two utterly incompatible perspectives. There's no way they can even come in conflict. So you get the most moving reversal of your ordinary expectations that you get in this wonderful movie. At the cemetery, as you know, Holly gets out and waits for Anna. Calloway drives off. He's driving himself now. Payne is dead. Holly stands there, lights a cigarette, waiting for Anna, expecting the two of them will walk off arm in arm. She approaches him and gets closer and closer. The music reaches a climax as we expect her to turn, and she walks right past him as if he didn't exist. She doesn't even look at him, and he hasn't a clue why. He's understood nothing. He chucks away his cigarette in total bafflement. And the movie, thanks to somebody, or good luck, remains absolutely true to the phenomena, true to the condition of the West, and in spite of the incomprehension of the writer and director, becomes a very deep movie instead of an entertainment. That's it for that. But I'm ready to hear things from you now. We have 5 minutes. Yeah.
You think it's important that both Graham Greene and Carol practically Catholic?
Yes, I think it's important, but I think the funny thing is, I don't know about Carol Reed, but Graham Greene has the right intuitions. It's just this crazy idea of his that he's writing an entertainment. He's set it all up for the right ending. But yes, without them being Catholic, the whole conflict between betrayer and murder would arisen. Yeah. But that can't be. Why did I say, his writer? The fact that Holly's a writer. That's a negative. I don't connect them because I think we're not supposed to think of him as really a writer. He's just a scribbler, as Calloway says. His writing's trash. If he were a real writer, we'd have a real problem. But I think he isn't. I think, yeah. Possibly they could change. They'll drastically change. I think these are archetypal characters. Do they change at all? Could they change? No, he couldn't. He's the perfectly professional ethical. He couldn't. He's so far out of it, he never would have recognized any reason to change. She's already the same. There's nothing that can make her any better. He's already an archetypal sinner. There's nothing that can make it any worse. So I think the whole thing is sort of frozen into this picture. Anything else? Yeah.
I've been thinking about this spiritual ethical model. Do you think that any allusion to that and like sort of running for the concept of
Of what? Of the end? Oh, you may be the person who plays I have for this year. What do you see? He wants to have the 4 quadrants of what I've written on the board. And all the 4 quadrants of the passage of the 4 power cities at the end. You do get a lot of play about that. But I think, look, it won't work. What's typical of the French? The French guy brings her lipstick that tells her she's got her lipstick. And I forget, the American says he doesn't understand anything about this protocol stuff. What's the Russian say? The German says those are the rules. We're going to follow those rules. But I'm afraid it doesn't that one. The French would be, if you had to have somebody up here to be the French guy, and if you had to have somebody over here, I guess we need the German. But I don't think you can make it work. Try. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah.
When I was researching the paper topic, I did notice that it only says Monday, February, and I had to again.
Oh, no, I think so. Everybody get out. Right. It's terrible. The papers do. Take out your paper topics. We got 3 minutes. Because you need to know that it's February, so it's 27th. The papers are due. And it doesn't say it on the paper now. But most importantly, papers due February. It says it on the syllabus, so it's not a secret. There you go. Okay, now.